My name is Alexander Caine, and for 7 years, my world was a concrete cube measuring 8 by 10. They didn't just put me in prison, they erased me. But tomorrow, the man who buried me will learn that graves are only dark if you're afraid of the dark. I am not afraid anymore. The day the gates of Blackwood Penitentiary clanged shut behind me, I made a decision. I would not rot. I would study. While other men counted days, I counted weaknesses, the guards, the routines, the flow of contraband and information. More importantly, I studied the only connection I had to the world that betrayed me. The quarterly financial reports of Valkyrie Capital, my former company which my lawyer was legally obligated to send. I read them like scripture. Every line item, every footnote, every bullish statement from the CEO, Marcus Thorne, my former best friend, the man who, with a single forged signature and a tearful testimony, traded my freedom for his controlling stake. The reports were a chronicle of his triumph. Record profits, lavish acquisitions, a skyrocketing share price. He had taken our fintech startup, built on my algorithms and his charm, and turned it into a personal empire. And he'd used my prison cell as the foundation. The betrayal was not a mystery. We were brothers. We built Valkyrie from a dorm room idea. I wrote the code that could predict micro fluctuations in commodity markets. He sold that vision to investors with a smile that could disarm a bank vault. The night before the IPO, he came to my apartment. We did it, Alex, kings of the world. He poured 2 glasses of 25-year-old Macallan. Mine tasted bitter. I woke up 12 hours later in my own bed, head pounding, to federal agents at my door. They found evidence of embezzlement, insider trading, and data manipulation on my secure server, evidence I never placed there. Marcus's testimony was devastating. He was the reluctant hero, uncovering his partner's tragic greed. In prison, rage is a luxury that gets you killed. I transmuted mine into ice, into data. The quarterly reports were my Rosetta Stone. I saw the lies Marcus was now telling the market, the proprietary tech upgrades that were just repackaged versions of my old, stolen code, the strategic partnerships with shell companies that bled cash into offshore accounts. He was doing exactly what he'd framed me for, but on a scale I'd never dreamed of. He was getting sloppy, drunk on success, and the belief that I was permanently silenced. My cellmate was an old hacker named Elias, doing time for shutting down the power grid of a small city during a dispute with an ISP. The systems got layers, kid, he'd wheeze in the dark. They put you in a cage inside a cage, legal, financial, digital. To break out, you need the keys to all of them. He became my mentor. In exchange for protecting him from the gangs, he taught me not just coding, but social engineering, digital forensics, the architecture of modern fraud. We had no computer, only paper and memory. We diagrammed attack vectors on the back of legal pads. We wrote pseudocode in the margins of library books. I was getting an advanced degree in ruin, paid for with my life. The key came in a report 2 years before my release. Valkyrie had made a major investment in a chain of luxury car dealerships. The numbers were too clean. Using Elias's principles and my own deep knowledge of Marcus's patterns, I pieced it together. It was a money laundering front. Marcus wasn't just cooking the books. He was in bed with serious, dangerous people. He had traded our clean, brilliant future for a dirty, gilded one. And he had left a digital trail, a ghost in the machine, so faint only the man who wrote the original algorithms would ever see it. It was his first, fatal mistake. He assumed the mind he'd stolen from was dead. My parole hearing was a formality. I was a model prisoner. Quiet, studious, remorseful. I spoke of my shame, my desire to contribute to society. The board saw a broken man. They didn't see the blueprint for annihilation being redrawn behind my eyes every night. The day of my release, I stood blinking in the sun, a $50 stipend, and a sack of belongings in my hand. No one was there to meet me. I took a bus to the city, but not my city. I went to a small town 3 hours away, to a post office box I'd arranged through a complex, anonymous relay Elias had designed from memory. Inside was a package from a John Carter, It contained a new identity, driver's license, social security card, birth certificate, and a key to a storage unit. In the unit, I found the tools of my resurrection: a laptop clean and untraceable, a stack of prepaid debit cards, a set of respectable off-the-rack clothes, and a single handwritten note from Elias, who had died of pneumonia 6 months prior. The firewalls are high, but the back door is in his heart. He's arrogant. Use it. Burn it all down. I changed in the storage unit. I shed the prison issue clothes like a skin. I looked at myself in a dusty mirror. Alexander Caine was gone, buried under 7 years of institutional routine. The man in the reflection was someone else, calmer, older, empty of everything but purpose. I bought a burner phone with cash. I logged into a public Wi-Fi network. With a few keystrokes, I accessed a series of encrypted Deadman Switch email accounts I'd set up through proxies years ago. Data began to flow. Financial records, shell company registrations, confidential memos, the ghosts I'd summoned from Valkyrie's servers while sitting on my prison cot. Marcus Thorne was giving a keynote speech that very night at the Innovators of Tomorrow Gala. It was being live-streamed. I found a quiet internet cafe, put in earbuds, and watched. There he was, on screen larger than life, charismatic, powerful, dressed in a tuxedo that cost more than my entire net worth as age. He spoke of ethics, of building a legacy with integrity. The audience applauded. He smiled that famous, disarming smile. A hot, raw wave of the old rage tried to surge up. I closed my eyes and let the ice flow over it. Rage was impulsive. What I felt now was colder. It was certainty. I had no money, no home, no friends. But I had something far more valuable. I had the truth, and I had a plan that was 7 years in the making. He had framed a brilliant, naive programmer. He was about to meet a patient, ruthless adversary who had learned his every move in the silence of a tomb. He thought prison was my end. It was only my forge. And now, tempered in that darkness, I am sharp enough to cut out the heart of his world. Tomorrow, I begin not to rebuild my life, but to dismantle his one flawless, fraudulent brick at a time. The first rule of dismantling a fortress is to become part of its landscape. I didn't stalk Marcus Thorne. I became a ghost in his machine, a whisper in the wires that fed his empire. Revenge isn't a knife in the dark, it's a systemic virus, and I spent 7 years writing the code. My new identity was Leo Mercer, a freelance IT security consultant specializing in legacy financial systems. The backstory, crafted with Elias's meticulous paranoia, was bulletproof. A quiet career, a period working abroad, a preference for remote contracts. I rented a sparse apartment in a different city, paid 6 months in cash for my dwindling stash. The anonymity was a weapon. Marcus lived in a glass penthouse. I would operate from the shadows beneath it. My first target wasn't Marcus. It was the ecosystem. Using the data packets I'd retrieved, I identified the weakest link in his new dirty chain: a mid-level comptroller at the luxury car dealership chain, a man named Martin Fields. Martin had a secret not buried in financials, but in a cloud server, a hidden folder of compromising personal photos. Marcus's people had missed it. They looked for greed, not shame. I found it in 12 minutes. I didn't blackmail him. Blackmail creates a desperate enemy. I offered a solution. From an encrypted number, I sent him 2 messages. The first, a low-resolution thumbnail of his secret. The second, your security is breached. The source is external. I can fix it. A one-time consult. No questions. He called, voice trembling. I met him at a public library, not a bar. I was all business, calm, wearing the uniform of a tech worker, plain jacket, glasses. I showed him how the exploit worked, used jargon that sounded like a foreign invasion. His fear of exposure was redirected into gratitude for his savior. I secured his digital life. My payment? Unfettered administrative-level access to the dealership's internal network, which was poorly firewalled from Valkyrie Capital's vendor management system. A digital backdoor, gifted by a thankful man. Through that crack, I observed. I saw the inflated invoices from premier automotive detailing for services never rendered, the payments cycling into offshore accounts. This was the money laundering conduit. I didn't steal a cent. I documented. I mapped the entire flow. Every transaction was a brick in the case I was building, not for the police, but for the court of Wall Street and shareholder opinion. Next, I needed a face in Marcus's world. Using a different set of credentials, I applied for a low-level data analyst position at a third-party audit firm Valkyrie used. The interview was a farce. I had pre-solved their technical test before I walked in. I got the job. For 3 weeks, I was a model employee, my head down, processing mundane spreadsheets. My only goal was access to the historic audit logs of Valkyrie's server. They're buried like fossils, were the login timestamps and IP addresses from the night the evidence was planted on my machine. The logs had been doctored, but badly, the digital equivalent of a smudged fingerprint. The original uncorrupted data was still, in the archival layer, a place only a systems architect would think to look. I, the architect of those very systems, retrieved it. It showed access from a terminal in Marcus's private home office at 2:17 a.m., the night of my arrest. The ice in my veins hummed. This was the connective tissue. But evidence alone is a static thing. It needs a narrative to become a weapon. I began to craft that narrative. I created a Ming blog, hosted on servers that bounced through 5 jurisdictions. Under the pseudonym Veritas, I started publishing detailed, technical analyses of irregularities in Valkyrie's public filings. Not accusations, just questions. Why did the algorithm efficiency metrics plateau exactly after the founder's imprisonment? How did the proprietary quantum trading core bear such striking structural similarities to open-source code from 7 years prior? The posts were written in dry, academic language, but their implications were explosive. They were designed to be found by financial bloggers hungry for a sophisticated scoop. The trap was set, but it needed 2 springs: the financial evidence and the human one. I knew Marcus's greatest vulnerability wasn't financial. It was his ego, his need to be seen as the brilliant, wronged hero. I decided to feed it. Using a voice modulator and a routed connection, I called his private line from a Swiss financial journalist. I praised his recent speech, flattered his vision, and asked an insightful question about Valkyrie's early days that only someone who was truly there could answer. He took the bait, talking for 20 minutes, puffing up with pride. The call was meaningless. The purpose was psychological, to reinforce his sense of invulnerability, to make him believe the world still saw his fiction as fact. A confident man makes mistakes. A man reveling in his own myth doesn't see the scaffold being built around him. I attended an industry fintech mixer where he was the guest of honor, wearing a different face, a slight prosthetic alteration to my jawline colored contacts. I watched him work the room, the same dazzling smile, the practice laughs. I felt nothing. No heat, no hate. He was a variable in an equation I was close to solving. As he raised a champagne flute for a toast, my burner phone vibrated. An alert. The financial blogger with the biggest reach had just published a piece titled Unasked Questions, the Valkyrie anomalies heavily citing the Veritas analyses. The first ripple. I left the mixer before it ended. Back in my silent apartment, I reviewed the blueprint. Phase 1, infiltration and evidence gathering, was complete. I had the digital forensics, the money trail, and the planted seed of public doubt. Phase 2 would require a more personal touch. It was time to move from the digital shadows to the physical world of his gilded life, to find the human pressure points he thought he'd insulated, his new inner circle, his wife, his carefully curated reputation. He was still giving speeches about the future. I was in his past, his present, and soon I would be the author of his end. The ghost was no longer in the machine. The ghost had its hand on the power switch, and the lights were about to flicker. The final act of any great revenge is not destruction, but revelation. I wouldn't just topple Marcus's empire. I would force him to stand in the town square of his own, making and watch as every mirror reflected the monster he truly was. The scaffolding was built. Now to light the fuse. Phase 2 required a physical key. That key was Evelyn Shaw, Marcus's recently hired, fiercely ambitious personal publicist. She was his shield against the world, the architect of his visionary persona. I studied her through the digital breadcrumb trail, her relentless career drive, her overlooked contributions, her quiet resentment that Marcus took all the credit. Her vulnerability wasn't a secret, it was professional hunger. I approached her not as Leo or Veritas, but as Arthur Finch, a freelance investigative journalist writing a feature on the architects of modern finance. I requested an interview with Marcus, citing her brilliant media strategy as the reason for my interest. She was flattered. Marcus, of course, agreed, a chance for more fawning coverage. The interview was conducted over a secure video link. I appeared as a distinguished, slightly academic figure. I asked soft questions, letting Marcus pontificate. Then, gently, I pivoted. Your resilience after the difficulties with your former partner is remarkable. Do you ever reflect on that chapter? His face tightened, but the camera was rolling. He gave a canned speech about pain, integrity, and moving forward. I nodded sympathetically. Of course. And the remarkable stability of your core algorithms, since then, a testament to your original vision. A harmless compliment, but I saw the micro-flinch, the briefest flicker of unease. I had planted a seed of doubt in him. Did this journalist know something? The next day, I sent Evelyn Shaw a secure file. Not a threat, but a professional courtesy. It contained a draft of my article. The first half was glowing. The second half contained 2 precise, footnoted questions. One about the algorithmic stagnation post-Caine, and another about the anomalous financial flows through the car dealership investments. The note read, "For accuracy before publication, your insights would be invaluable." I wasn't threatening Marcus. I was showing Evelyn the cliff edge he was walking towards. Her career was tied to his. She would have to confront him, becoming an internal source of pressure he couldn't firewall. Simultaneously, I triggered the financial cascade. Using my access, I initiated a series of perfectly legal but highly suspicious automated trading queries within Valkyrie's own system. They were designed to mimic the pre-trade activity of a major competitor preparing a hostile short attack. The alerts would flood Valkyrie's risk department. Paranoia, once seated, grows exponentially in the hothouse of Wall Street. Then, I delivered the masterpiece to the one person who hated Marcus more than I did. His lead counsel for my trial, a woman named Diana Roth. She was ice-cold and brilliant, and I knew she'd always suspected the truth. To her personal encrypted desk line, I sent a file containing the uncorrupted server logs from a night of the frame-up. No message, just the data. She would understand its provenance and its power immediately. An officer of the court with evidence of a profound fraud on the judiciary, her own professional ethics and liability would compel action. I turned his own defender into a silent, inevitable enemy. The final piece was psychological. I knew Marcus's pattern. Under stress, he'd seek control, often by reasserting dominance over something he owned. I gave him a target. From a hacked account of a known short seller, I leaked a single credible rumor to a financial gossip feed. Whispers of a DOJ probe into Valkyrie's early-day accounting. Source, close to the late partner Caine. It was a ghost punch. He couldn't fight a rumor, but he'd scramble to disprove it, likely by trying to further solidify the false evidence against me, digging his hole deeper in real time. I would be watching. The collapse, when it came, was not a bang, but a symphony of failing systems. The Veritas blog posts were picked up by a major financial paper. Valkyrie's stock dipped. The anomalous trading alerts triggered internal panic. The board, receiving nervous calls from investors, demanded a meeting. Evelyn Shaw, fearing for her own reputation, began drafting crisis comms that subtly distanced her strategies from Marcus's personal oversight. Diana Roth, I learned, had filed an urgent, confidential motion with the court. I watched it all from a park bench across from Valkyrie's tower, sipping bad coffee. I saw Marcus arrive that morning crisp and confident. I saw him leave 8 hours later, his tie loose, his face ashen, flanked by 3 new stern-faced lawyers who were not Diana Roth. The press was already gathering. I didn't feel triumph. I felt the cold, clean silence of a solved equation. He was now trapped in a maze where every exit led to ruin. Financial scandal, legal reinvestigation, professional disgrace, and the crushing realization that the ghost he'd buried had been patiently tunneling beneath his feet for 7 years. My phone buzzed. An alert. A warrant had been quietly issued for the financial records of the luxury car dealership chain. The first domino had fallen in the legal chain. I stood up, tossed the coffee in the trash, and walked away, melting into the crowd of anonymous people. The man who framed me for a crime is now living inside one of his own design. My prison had walls. His is the entire world, and every face in it is a reminder that I am not forgotten. I am the verdict.